Danger. Do not proceed when these posts are in water. That's scary, isn't it? Imagine driving down here and you can't just get submerged in water. That would not be ideal. So, Sunderland Point, for anyone that's local, you will know this area. Notorious for quick changing tides with the Lune estuary, and it's got this causeway road. I've never been down here before. Definitely never driven down here. It's low tide at the minute. I could have come down in the car. Just not having it. I just don't fancy it, you know. On top of that, I want to get my steps in. And this is going to give me probably an extra mile of walking. So we've got the Nikon D7200, of course, and we're going to get stuck into a bit of handheld photography now. The conditions are amazing. I don't know if you can see. It's really foggy. Which wasn't forecast. It was meant to be just an overcast, dull, boring day. We're about 3 hours till sunset, so we've got tons of time. Down at Sunderland Point, at the Lune estuary that comes out into Morecambe Bay, we should have loads of little fishing boats and stuff like that. So if these conditions stick around, we could get some awesome photographs. So before we move on, I want to grab a quick shot here. Look at this beautiful channel here. This, as you're looking at it there, just sums up this area. Sunderland Point, these gorgeous salt marshes, and these kind of little rivers, these channels that cut through and meander around the landscape. It's absolutely glorious, and I hope you can tell this is something I've been loving recently, is subtle light. This is a perfect example of it. So you don't always need, you know, real direct sunlight on the land to call it light. You know, it's really cloudy today, it's foggy, we definitely haven't got any direct sunlight. But here is a perfect example. So if you look there, look at the shadows on this riverbank here. But then just above it there, we've got highlights. Very subtle, but very, very pleasing at the same time. And by the time I've took a shot, pressed the shutter button and got one in the can, we're going to capture all of these amazing subtleties here. Look, you can see it over there. Look at all the contours on the sand. It's just giving us shadows and highlights. Absolutely beautiful. So the composition is pretty much as you're going to see it there, really. Nice and simple, except from the fact we're using the 16 to 35mm lens on the Nikon D7200. So it's not going to be quite as wide as you're looking at it there. But definitely very, very simple. So first things first, I'm going to lock in the focus 1/3 of the way in. Back button focus, bang. Focus is locked in, lovely. Now, apart from the obvious things like exposure and focus, there's two things that I want to make sure are right here. Firstly, is I want to make sure the horizon is level. So I'm going to use the electronic level there on the screen. You can see there, this doesn't matter too much. I mean, it's easily sorted in post. But if you can get it right out on location, you might as well, eh? And secondly, I'm using the rule of thirds. So again, you don't need to be too over the top about it, but it's something that I like to follow. So it doesn't need to be perfect, especially in this case. But because it's a straight horizon, it works really well in this instance, in my opinion. So the river's cutting in from the bottom left-hand side of the composition. We're shooting at ISO 100, f8, and 1/60th of a second. So let's get that one in the can now. Absolutely class. So wonderful first image to start off the day. And yeah, definitely tells the story of this landscape so far. These beautiful salt marshes, these gorgeous meandering rivers. Hopefully more of that to come. Let's crack on. Right, so I'm just going to stop quickly here and grab another shot here. I cannot deny this. The sun is now beating down through the fog and it's casting some beautiful direct light on the land here. So this is good. You know, this is a real contrast to the last photograph. We've got light on the land here. And I wouldn't go as far as calling it subtle. We've got a very high dynamic range here. Look down here, it's really dark. And then the sky, of course, well, we're pretty much shooting directly into the sun. Very bright. But yeah, I love just the sweep of the road that leads down to Sunderland Point. And again, coming in from the bottom right hand side, we've got one of these channels here. Now, I have just unintentionally discovered something really cool. Okay, I don't know if this is well known. I've never heard anybody talk about this before, and I've just found this out completely by accident. So let me explain. Let's get the focus locked in to start with. So 1/3 of the way in, There we go, we're focused. Okay, composition, I've explained it. You know, we've got this channel coming in from the bottom right hand side, we've got the bridge somewhere in the middle, and then I'm using the rule of thirds once again. Now, problem here is exposure. I need to exposure bracket here. The sky's too bright, the foreground's too dark. So I've got my camera, you can see there, set up to take 5 separate brackets. Okay, so 1 base exposure, 2 underexposed, 2 overexposed. Okay, now what I've discovered is I've accidentally had my camera in continuous high shooting mode, which is mint for this. So I'm going to have my base exposure ISO 100, f8, 1/250th of a second. And let me show you this now. All I have to do is hold in, wait for it to have taken 5 shots. So there we go, I think I probably took 6 there, but look at the histograms. They're all different. And we've got that complete range, and that's all been taken in the space of probably a second and a half or something. Whereas usually it'd probably take a second in between each photograph. Of course, because we're shooting handheld, we want to limit that time between each photograph because we want to limit the amount of movement between each shot, so that when we merge them together in post, it's a lot easier for the software to do. So, I mean, perhaps everyone does that, and I'm just an absolute wally that's found it out after all these years. But that is something I will be doing going forward. So, another one in the can. Let's carry on down. I just need to see where the road sweeps around there. That leads us down to Sunderland Point. You might be able to see a few buildings around there and trees. That's where I need to get to. That's where the fishing boats are. Let's get the steps in. So we finally found the fishing boats. Camera's a bit muddy. I thought I'd put you down on the floor, guys. I hope you don't mind. So, all I'm doing here really is portrait dimension. I want this little stone down in the foreground. It's really beautiful. It's kind of covered in this sort of greeny yellow coloured seaweed. And then of course, this beautiful blue coloured boat here called Ficus. Whatever that means. Perhaps one of yous know. Right. ISO 100, f11 and 1/20th of a second. What I'm doing, I'm going to shoot it as like a sort of 9:16 crop, so it's going to be quite sort of tall from bottom to top. And I don't mind that. Usually I prefer to shoot in a sort of 4:5, but this is the only way that I can get the sort of stone in at the bottom and then the boat at the top, and giving them both a little bit of breathing room from the top and bottom of the frame. So I'm focusing on the stone, which I'm placing down in the bottom right hand third somewhere. There we go. Up on the screen, ISO 100. I think I told you that already. F11 and 1/20th of a second. We haven't got too much of a high dynamic range for this scene, because the sun's gone back in behind some clouds, which is probably a good thing. But yeah, I quite like that. It's definitely 100% the sort of image that I kind of envisaged that I was going to get down here at Sunderland Point. So yeah, let's get a little bit further down to the village, I suppose, see if there's any more boats. And honestly, the light is actually really nice. So I've come, you have to excuse me, there's a couple of cars coming past here. There's the blue boat. I've literally come about 10 seconds and I've already got the camera out again. I'm just being seduced, guys. Just let these cars past. I've been seduced by the light. Look at that. I really hope that this translates well on the camera. Let me darken it down a little bit. That is stunning. So the fog started to lift, but it's kind of lingering above Sunderland Point, above the village, those buildings, those trees down there. Then of course, we've got this kind of causeway here that's leading us out into that light. Absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to grab a shot. I need to be careful because we've got a very high dynamic range again, but we found our little accidental technique, so I'm going to do that again. I'm in continuous high shooting mode, and I'm going to bracket 5 separate photographs. Now I'm also going to try and do something a little bit creative, because I feel like there's been a few snapshots which I don't mind. Look at this beautiful rusty old pole here, rusty old fence. I'm going to get him in the foreground, so I'm going to shoot in a portrait dimension again. So this is going to be fairly tricky because I need to be very still here. So 1/50th of a second, f11 and ISO 100, that is the base exposure. But like I said, I'm taking 5 separate brackets here. I'm getting in really close to this little fence post. And I'm gonna zoom in and focus on the fence post. Shoot at f11, and I am not bothered if I lose focus as we go off into the background. I don't mind. It's quite soft back there anyway because we've got the fog and the haze and all that light. So there's the focus dialed in. And then same as before with the bracket, I'm just going to hold in until I hear that the shutter has taken 5 photographs. So let's go for it. Absolutely class. Honestly, I cannot believe I didn't know about this technique. Please let me know. Comment below. Do you do this when you shoot handheld brackets? I've promised you, I've never heard anybody talk about this. Continuous high shooting, bracketed handheld shots. It makes so much sense, and it's something that gives me so much more confidence to shoot handheld brackets like this. That's amazing. Right, so what we on? 3,000 steps. We need to get down to this village because it's been a long time coming. Let us crack on. So we're into the village now. As you can see, it is beautiful. I am constantly just like blown away by how beautiful my local area is. Not even my local area though, just like every single time that I go out with my camera, I feel like I'm able to find something, and I'm constantly just reminded how beautiful this world is, however cheesy that sounds. I think it just comes back to that mindset thing with photography, doesn't it? It just changes the way you look at the world. You've got cameras as eyes, and you're always just looking for the beauty in everything. And that is honestly, I stand by this, that has completely changed my life, because even when I'm out and I'm not using my camera, I'm so much more appreciative of the world around me. I must admit though, my local area is very beautiful and I am very lucky. That has to be said. Right, I'm going to grab a shot here of another fishing boat. So this side of the boat is quite cast in shadow, whereas the other side here, it's quite hard to point, is quite bright, and that's because the sun's coming from that direction, and it's gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. Again, we're working with some quite subtle light, but this time, yeah, it is direct. You can see behind me it's really bright. It's lovely and muddy, but I'm going to get the camera out and grab a quick snap. I might even do a square crop here. Right, so I've changed my mind a little bit. What I was thinking before, I think I did say I was going to try a square crop. I was going to do a square crop of the boat and just kind of isolate it. But I found this little buoy here down in the foreground, and I don't know if you can see, but all these dead reeds and twigs and logs and stuff, see how it kind of like sweeps round? So my feet down here, submerged in the mud by the way, see, look at this, how it like sweeps all the way round from left to right, and it takes us up to the fishing boat. I really like that, so I'm going to work with it. Now, I don't need to bracket here because the sun has gone, it's not as kind of harsh as it was before, but we've still got the subtlety of the light on the right hand side of the little fishing boat there. And yeah, I just think the buoy is making for a really nice little, you know, a nice little bit of interest down in the foreground. Right, so we don't need to bracket here. So we don't need our newfound technique, so just a nice single photograph. You can see I'm shooting it in a portrait dimension, but I'm going to probably crop this to a 4x5, so I'll probably crop down from the sky a little bit and crop up from the foreground a little bit. But as you've seen it there, that is pretty much it in essence. I'm going to focus on the buoy, which just so happens to be 1/3 of the way into the image, so that's a win-win. And again, like I've been doing throughout this whole video, I've just realised, following the rule of thirds. Now, just before I take it, I want to show you something here. See that little sort of hinge, or I don't know what that is, on top of the buoy with the little hook on the end? If I step to the left, think about where that leads the eye. If I was going to take the shot from here, it takes us up that way. Whereas if I just go a tiny little bit more to the right, you see how the little pole points up to the fishing boat? And that just helps with this sweep. It helps to take us up to the boat, and hopefully you can see there, you know, that's a really, really small movement. I've literally just done one step to the left, but it's going to make quite a big difference with how this image turns out. So 1/20th of a second, f11 and ISO 100. We're focused down on the buoy. Class. Absolute class. It's probably quite a long video, guys, to be honest, but I'd like to get one more shot. I think I'm going to walk a bit further down this way, just because I've never been there, and we'll see if we can find something else. So I don't know if anyone else does this, but I went and had a little look round where I said I was going to, by the way. But I want to kind of save it, and I always kind of do this in my local areas. I don't want to just traipse around for hours and just get stuck into every, like, you know, minute detail. I like to save it, so I feel like I could come back here again and again, and there's still going to be loads of new compositions and little gems to discover. Maybe it's just me. So I'll tell you what a cracker. We found that new technique. That's an absolute treat, completely unexpected. And what a location, Sunderland Point. 100% we'll be back probably within the next month, to be honest. But anyway, thank you so much as always for tuning in, much appreciated. And I see you on the next exercise on that point. 5,000 steps. Mind you, I shouldn't be berating myself. I've got to probably get 4,000 steps to get back to where I started. Anyway, thanks again. I shall see you on the next exercise. Out.